Welcome to the Superabound podcast, where vision-led entrepreneurs learn to build a generous business without sacrificing what matters most. You are listening to episode 349, Spotting and Stopping Early Stage Burnout. Hello and welcome to the show. I have good news and bad news. The good news is this episode will be very helpful to you if you have ever found yourself kind of sliding into burnout and maybe not recognizing it before it's too late. The bad news is when we were recording, there were glitches. It was a very glitchy Zoom meeting that we had. So rather than re-recording, we just decided we would live with a little imperfection. You might hear us sounding digitized from time to time, but you should be able to understand everything we're saying beautifully. It only happens a couple times throughout the episode, but bad audio always bugs me. So I wanted to give you a heads up so you know that it's nothing wrong with your speakers. It is something that just came up with our little internet glitch today, but the episode is powerful nonetheless, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's dive in.
That's a tricky one.
Aren't you impressed? One take.
Yeah, just went slow with.
Hi, everybody. Obviously, Steve is here with me today because we want to talk about something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, something we have both definitely experienced probably more than once in our own lives, and something that we've both helped clients with. Steve is working closely with a company right now as a co-founder, and this is such a juicy topic. I even wrote an article about it. So we're going to dive in. This episode today has been sponsored by my new program, where you can find that over at besuperabound.com/bestweek. This program is a 5-day on-demand class designed especially for busy leaders, busy entrepreneurs, folks maybe like you listening who maybe have dealt with burnout before and want to make sure that never happens again. We'll maybe talk about it a little bit throughout the episode, but you can go over to besuperabound.com/bestweek to learn more and sign up. You'll have me in your pocket for 5 days of coaching and some brand new tools that I've been working on with my VIP clients.
And it's a great program. I mean, it's very much connected to everything we're talking about today. Just to share a bit of my own story around it, a week or two ago, you said, Steve, your life is out of control. And I said, Erin, you're absolutely right. And you said, I'm going to help.
Did not say it like that.
Well, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. I can be a little sensitive about feedback and criticism and such. So I always hear the worst, even though it was something much more generous, I'm sure.
I'm sure it wasn't. I'm very direct, but I definitely didn't say your life is spiraling out of control.
And so we sat down to do a scheduling activity, which is part of the best week. And I was like, all right, Erin's going to help me, sort of when I do my emails, when I do my customer responses, when I do my meetings, all the stuff of the business. She goes, all right, when are you doing your meditation? When are you doing your exercise? When are you spending time with your family? And I'm like, oh, but I don't need to worry about those things. And I was like, oh, hang on. Yeah, let's worry about those things and make sure that comes first and then everything else comes second. So that is, if you want to know what the Best Week program in a nutshell is, it's that, making it so that your work in the world is supported by your life, not the other way around.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about it throughout, but most of my clients, if not all of them, have dealt with at least early stage burnout. Some of them have had full-blown burnout that I can relate to. And the thing is, often it's so gradual that you don't even know it's happening. I think that early stage burnout doesn't necessarily start because you're busy. It starts with something a little deeper. It's a misalignment with your vision. It's sometimes prioritizing what other people think is urgent and necessary, without giving yourself the space and time to consider the lanterns that you actually care about, that are on the mountain of your big vision. This happens. We've talked a lot in our book Superabound about the goal swamp. And that is often what early stage burnout looks and feels like. It feels like you are trudging around in a muddy swamp, barely able to put one foot in front of the other because you're working on things that are not calling you forward. But from the outside, you probably look very productive. From the outside, you're doing all the things. You're trying to catch up. You're trying to prioritize all of the different projects. But inside, a lot of my clients, and definitely myself, it feels like a low grade anxiety. It feels like putting out fires and not really ever feeling like you're making progress. So you're dealing with things, you're taking on challenges, but you're not getting a sense of accomplishment from what you are doing.
And the busy is just such a desired state by many people, right? If you actually just pause for a second and think about how you feel when you're busy, there's a sense of aliveness. There's a sense of being needed, being wanted, of being productive. There's almost a moral quality, a moral, goodness to being busy. Because the opposite is being not busy. There's a moral, negative to being not busy. Well, you're being lazy, you're being self-indulgent, you're being, non-productive. And so that's a good place to begin, is like, is there a moral flavor in your own mind around that busyness? Because if there is, and you kind of equate busyness with goodness, busyness with productivity, it's going to be hard to actually take this seriously and take a step back and say, do I maybe need to reassess? Should I change something about my schedule or my priorities, what it is that I want to create in the world?
And again, it can happen so gradually that it can be very hard to spot. Like it or not, most people do not. The first sign often comes from outside of you. Often it's not you that will be the one to spot that you're kind of sliding into that burnout zone. It's the other people in your life.
It's like when your wife says your life is spiraling out of control.
Which I did not say. But yes, in this case, I know that we have good communication and you trust me to sometimes be the bumper rail on your life and
the gutter.
Yeah.
From rolling life gutter balls.
Don't want to roll life gutter balls. Well said. But for me, it often comes from our kids. They'll start saying like, you're always on your phone, or why are you checking your email at 9 o'clock at night? Why are you this? Why are you that? It comes from the people who know us well and are used to our attention, are used to our time, are used to our focus and presence. And unfortunately, I'll just bring some of my previous relationship coaching into this. A lot of us are not able to receive that well. I know Steve could handle it when I didn't say what you said I said, but I did say, how are you feeling? Are you feeling organized? I noticed you dropped the ball on some stuff. Would it be helpful for us to sit down and look at your calendar? I kind of offered him a free coaching session, which I almost never do, which I think probably signaled to Steve that,
Let's take a check. Let's take a pause here.
This is bad. But a lot of folks can't receive that. They can't receive that information, that feedback. And it's unfortunate because it's usually the people who know us well that are willing to say something. Kids do this in very honest ways. They'll maybe get clingier. They might start to cause more chaos because they're feeling like they are just looking for some kind of connection. Other grown-ups in your life, your loved ones, might pull back from you when they feel like you're not present. Other people might get more, I don't know, insistent about spending time with you, and all of that sort of thing. So even if you don't love the way that someone shares their opinion with you, sometimes just checking in with how much that irks you or bugs you can be a really good thing. Even if you don't think it's true at first, it is a good time to check in and say, do I love how I'm spending my time? Am I working towards my vision? And I say that because I think there's another category of this happening sometimes when you do start to work on things that are very vision aligned. Sometimes the people in your life who are very comfortable with you and the way you are get very uncomfortable. They don't like that you're spending time on something that has you changing. So I understand that the distinction can be really subtle. So I think it comes from, if someone gives you feedback that you're working too much, you're working too hard, you seem really stressed, and that is a person who you value their opinion, check in and just see how you feel. If you feel like this is a season where I am working with a startup and it's a big push, and I can see that on this day when this thing happens, I will be able to take time off, and hey, let's book that vacation. Maybe that's okay for you. But if you check in with yourself and you feel like, I am working really hard, I do feel really stressed, I don't really know what the point of all of this is anymore, listen to that. Listen to your inner wisdom.
That's the wisdom. That's the wisdom. And to continue on that thread with where to find the wisdom, look to where you're annoyed. Look to where it feels bad. Sometimes those feelings of, uh, dread or anxiety can actually be pointers towards what's not going right. We call that static. And oftentimes people just try to avoid it. They try to replace it with other things. They just get down to work. They, you know, it could be the jumping off point for all kinds of unsavory activities and habits and addictions and whatever else. But if you actually pause and attune to what it feels like in your body and what the message that it might have for you, then that is a way to avoid the burnout while it's still at the early stages. So, talk a little bit about static.
Yeah, I mean, you said it really well, but I think static is part of the process. So static is not a state to be avoided. It is literally a place along the dial. If your life is like a radio frequency, it's the place between one clear frequency and the next. There's a natural stage of, especially if you're a business owner, especially if you're a leader of some kind, you are constantly going to be dipping into the white fuzzy noise of the unknown. You are going to, your life is not, your work is not prescriptive. You don't have probably the same kinds of meetings and outcomes and deadlines that somebody in a more structured work environment might have. You are going to need to get very comfortable traveling from one frequency through static to another. I see this most often, actually, if we were thinking about how a work week might go, I see this happen to people often like midweek. At the beginning of the week, you're all refreshed, you're excited, you've got your calendar laid out. Hopefully, the way I'm going to teach you how to do that in my program will have you being a little more generous to you as a human rather than robotic. But it's really normal for the middle of the week to sometimes feel overwhelming, full of static. So I'm going to teach you some tools for working through that static. It's going to be a little bit different than we've maybe done this before, but you will learn how to use that static as wisdom. It sounds weird to say, how am I going to use my confusion and fear and anxiety as wisdom? But there's often a lot of gold in there that can bring you closer to your big vision and your next lanterns rather than further away. If you actually listen to it, it's trying to get you to that next place of clarity.
And so, a big part of being an effective leader is taking the time that you need, reassessing where is your energy, where is your focus, because you probably don't have a boss who's telling you where you need to put your energy and where you need to put your focus. So you are that boss. And so if you don't spend some real time checking in with the boss, in this case, you with your CEO hat
Yes.
on, with your leader hat on, you're just going to get sucked into whoever's got the loudest voice, whoever's clamoring for the most attention, or whatever your kind of conditioning says is most important to be doing. So that's why it matters so much to check in with your vision so that you can say no to the things that you should be saying no to. And often that is the hardest word and the most powerful word for an entrepreneur, for a leader to say.
Yeah. Also say sometimes it's not even saying no to doing certain things. It's often like no to a whole entire strategy. When you're the visionary of your business, there's going to be a lot of people in the world trying to tell you how to strategically do this and do that and market and sell and get clients and all of the things. But if you don't have clarity, if you're full of static about those strategies and ideas, it's probably a clue that it's not aligned with your vision. So you have to hear your vision and learn how to turn up the volume of that, which guess what? I'm going to talk about it a lot in that 5-day program, because tending your vision is really a big part of this. So if you know that you slide into kind of early stage burnout, or you get really deep in, one of the prescriptions, we'll call it, is utilizing the superbound tending triad.
And the tending triad stems from your vision. The causes of early stage burnout are not the number of things you're doing, it's the number of non-vision aligned things that you're doing.
Yeah.
So taking the time to reset, taking the time to tune in and say, what is my vision, and what flows from that is how you stop that slide from early stage burnout to late stage burnout, where nobody wants to be. So the tending triad is how you care for that source of energy, that source of life that gives rise to everything else that you want to create. You are not a machine. You are not a robot. You're not a goal-crushing automaton. You are a human being who is soft and squishy and fragile. And, here by the grace of the gods go all of us. And so, it's a chance to actually tune into that rather than kind of pushing yourself like an economic machine.
Yeah. And, we wrote about this all at length. And yet, for so many people, the idea of self-investment, of tending their inner flame, it's like a really beautiful idea. But if those things are not on your calendar, if your sustaining rituals do not appear on your calendar daily, if you are not protecting your time and your energy as sacred by both what you say yes to and what you say no to, if you're not carving out space for sacred vision, then you're not tending your inner flame. The tending triad is not existent. And I really think that if you get one thing from the Your Best Week program, it is going to be bringing those pieces into your life. Because the idea isn't that we kind of stop early stage burnout next week and then just kind of delay it till next month. The idea is that you start to build energy, your own fuel, and then make every week amazing in accordance with your priorities, not other people's urgency.
Yeah, it's kind of a whole life transformation, but with it's like, low key. I'm just going to do a
Yeah.
couple of things, just a couple of things, but they turn into a different kind of life.
Yes, it's literally like if I could give you in a nutshell the experience of like if I could come and live with you for a week and just be your coach 24 hours a day. Listen, it might be a little intense and overwhelming. I don't want to coach you when you're sleeping. But if I could give you something small to work on, because I do know that this is exactly what I would teach you to make the most impact with the least amount of time, effort, and reinvention. It's a gradual process, and it's one that I hope you will take on and enjoy and let me know how it goes.
Yeah. So head on over. The program starts soon. besuperabound.com/best week. No spaces, no dashes. And
Right in the show notes.
it'll
We'll
be in
make
the
it
show notes
easier.
too.
You can just click it. Not when you're driving. But yeah, that is it's going to be incredible. I am so excited to share this with you. It's something I am gifting to all of my VIP clients who have started to work with me this year, because it's something I think all of them need, something I hope that you will also utilize.
Thanks for listening. See you there.
Take care.